wonderful subject of prayer. I hope you'll enjoy this. And towards the end, we'll do a little review of the Lord's Prayer, because we say it so often, and I may not tell you a whole bunch that you don't know, but I'm hoping I'll give you a few little insights into the Lord's Prayer that will make it even more meaningful for you. Now let's start out with some basics here as we look at number one there. We really have a dialogue with God. That's you and me. And here's God. And what I've tried to tell you over several times, how does God communicate to us? How does God come to us? And I've tried to tell you about the pipes. Remember? The means of grace. And so he comes to us in his word and baptism and the Lord's Supper. That's how he comes to us. Okay. And then how do we come to God in prayer? Well, come to God, we say faith, that's true. But how do we talk to God? This is how he talks to us. How do we talk to God? And we talk to God in prayer. Okay? So under normal circumstances, this is how we carry on a dialogue with God. Unless God spoke to you last night in your bedroom, which you want to make sure it wasn't a bad can of chili. Okay? This is the normal way. Now, do we know that he's done other ways? Well, of course, like to Moses and to the prophets and things like that. Of course, yeah, he can do that, but I wouldn't expect that. Okay? So he can do that and has done that. But under normal circumstances, this is where God speaks to you and me, word and sacraments. Okay? And then we speak to God in prayer. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And this is how we carry on a dialogue with God. Okay? So, with that in mind, let's look at number one. The child of God enjoys high privileges, not the least of which is prayer. Well, let's just see what prayer is, and it's not complicated at all. Psalm 79:14 says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." And then Psalm 10:17, "Lord, thou hast heard the what? The desire of the humble." Now, you might want to use your highlighter or underliner. Obviously, what we're emphasizing are the bold black words, words of my mouth, meditation of my heart, and in the second Bible passage, the desire. And from this we learn prayer is what? Talking to God. That's all it is. It's not complicated. Either with the heart and the lips, right? Which means out loud. Like I say a prayer out loud before we start the class. I say a prayer out loud before we end the class, or as we end the class. Or just talking to God with your heart. You don't have to talk out loud. God knows exactly what you're thinking or feeling, right? So prayer is simply communications with God. Now, God already knows what we're going to say, which shouldn't surprise you because you know God knows what? Everything. Exactly. So prayer isn't for God. Prayer is for us to exercise our faith. Jot down two passages, and we'll look them up real quick, that God already knows what you're going to pray for. And I know somebody said, well, then why should I pray? Because he wants you to, as I'm going to show you. We're like children, aren't we? Okay, the first one is Psalm 139, 1-4. And we read, "O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. And before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord." So he knows it even before the word's on his tongue. And then also Matthew 6:8. Jesus says, "Do not be like them," he means the pagans, "for your Father knows what you need before you ask him." So now none of this should be a surprise to you because we talked about the qualities or traits of God earlier, lesson 2, and you know God knows all things. So this shouldn't surprise you that he knows what you're going to pray before you even pray it. So prayer is simply communicating with God. Some people get intimidated because, let's face it, some prayers are very eloquent, aren't they? They sound real, boy, that was awesome. I wish I could pray like that. And sometimes we get intimidated by that. But a prayer is a prayer. Whether it's just a heartfelt thing you have in your heart for some loved one or something, for healing or something, or some flowery, eloquent, wonderful prayer. It doesn't matter. It's simply communication with God as a child to his or her father.